What's crack, it's your boy Broshmo, just in case you did not know. So, new look, new me, kind of sorta, but we're talking about fantasy football today. More so, we're talking about draft strategies. You see a bunch of them, like a zero running back draft or a zero wide receiver draft. You need a sound strategy going into the year. That way you have a good team that could hopefully push you to the playoffs. It's almost the biggest deciding factor, drafting well. So, I've been doing this for about 10 years. A lot of those years I've been playing in money leagues. So I know a thing or two about going into the draft with a good strategy, and I'm here to share that with you today. I got 5 steps I want you to follow if you're looking to win fantasy football. But before that, go ahead, give me a like and subscribe if you enjoy the content. Really helps out the channel a lot. It's much appreciated. But with that being said, let's go ahead and let's dive into this. My first tip, or first rule, whatever you want to call it, is to draft kickers and defense. Wait to draft them into the later rounds. Unless your league has special rewards for kickers and defense, you could probably just stream them throughout the season, and you might stumble upon one of the higher scoring ones. My second tip is to draft running back early and often. Try to have 3 by the end of round 5. Running backs are very vital and very essential if you didn't already know that. In 2018, last season, 7 running backs outscored the second highest scoring wide receiver. Last year's 16th highest scoring running back was Adrian Peterson, and he was only outscored by 10 wide receivers. Running backs are a lot harder to hit on, so invest in draft capital early on running back gives you a better chance on hitting those picks. And right here, I have the 2018 preseason rankings and then the results. And only 9 of the top 20 ranked running backs actually finished in the top 20. Now, when we go on, take just a further look at this list, what kind of like basically happened here was you had some injuries right there. Jerick McKinnon, he went down with a ACL tear at the beginning of the year. Devontae Freeman went out early in the year. Delvin Cook was hurt all year. Leonard Fournette had issues with injury as well as with the staff. Le'Veon Bell was on a holdout. Royce Freeman was banged up for a majority of the year. So you saw a lot of injuries. But the one thing that I can't stress enough is having a reliable handcuff on those running backs you've drafted. Because if you look at Le'Veon Bell, his backup, James Conner, finished in the top 10. Royce Freeman, the guy that was behind him, Phillip Lindsay, he finished in the top 15. And then Telvin Coleman, the backup for Devontae Freeman. So you had that. There was also red flags for some of these players, like Le'Veon Bell's holdout. Devontae Freeman has had injury issues. LaShawn McCoy was kind of on the decline. Alex Collins was just a big mystery, a big question mark. So you want to be able to notice those red flags right before you go into the draft. But drafting a handcuff is almost, especially for your star running backs, is essential. But you want to draft them for the right price. Like Connor and Lindsay, they were basically undrafted free agents in most leagues. Coleman was way too high, so if you had Devontae Freeman, you probably wouldn't have got Coleman. But I just can't stress how important it is to go after running backs early, because they score a lot higher than receivers. They might not be necessarily as reliable as the top receivers, but receivers are much easier to hit on. See, what's significant about this is because the drop-off at talent at running back is a lot steeper than it is at wide receiver. So using those early picks on running backs is more vital, because you could find low-end wide receiver 1s or high-end wide receiver 2s in the later rounds. For instance, right here, after round 5, wide receivers drafted, you had Brandon Cooks. He ended at the end of the year at wide receiver 13, and you could have got him after the 5th round. Julian Edelman at wide receiver 23. Cooper Kupp was averaging 11 points through the first 8 games before he got hurt. Tyler Boyd finished wide receiver 17, and that was missing 2 games. Calvin Ridley, wide receiver 18. But asterisk here, I don't suggest drafting rookie wide receivers. They typically take a year to develop and basically get their foot in the league. So I would caution against that. Tyler Lockett finished at wide receiver 11, Kenny Galladay at wide receiver 21, and then Robert Woods at wide receiver 10. And if you follow this draft strategy that I got, where you're drafting 3 running backs in the first 5 rounds, you're going to end up, at least you should, with 2 low-end wide receiver 1s or 2 high-end wide receiver 2s. And I say that because of this next tip. Use an early pick on one of the big 3 tight ends. Now, I know earlier in my rankings I did like a month or 2 ago that I kind of ranked these guys a little lower, but honestly, I think you should get either George Kittle, Travis Kelce, or Zach Ertz with either your 2nd or 3rd round pick. And I'm talking you might have to use an early 2nd to maybe an early 3rd round pick to get one of these guys, because look at their numbers last year. Kelce, he had 294.6 points, and this is a standard PPR league, and that would have put him at a wide receiver 9. Zach Ertz had 280 points, and that would have put him at wide receiver 10. And then Kittle would have been ranked at wide receiver 13 with 258. Now, the only other tight end to even crack 200 points was Eric Ebron, who came out of nowhere and had a bonkers year last year. So not only are you getting a high-end player at a very scarce position, tight end, because, these guys, it's not like they just cleared 200. They destroyed it. They demolished it. So you're going to be playing at least a high-end wide receiver 2 at your tight end spot. So you're able to fill what you could maybe hit on another wide receiver in the later rounds, and you have a low-end wide receiver 1 and a middle to high-end wide receiver 2. And it just puts you in a better place to be able to basically score points at the skill positions, because ideally you're going to be starting a running back in that slot. And speaking from experience last year, these tight ends either burned me or they helped me tremendously. I was in 5 leagues last year, and I can tell you, all the championship teams, all the teams that won it all, had one of those 3 tight ends. I was able to get through the playoffs. I was able to savage my season because I had made one terrible trade last year. But George Kittle carried me through the year, and guess what? Guess who ended up winning the league? Guy with Travis Kelce. Just saying, these tight ends, they hold a lot more value than what I first initially thought, and probably a lot more than some people out there are thinking. And this brings me to tip 4. Don't draft your quarterback late. And if it's only a 1-start quarterback league, don't get a backup. There's no need for a backup. You're going to be starting this guy throughout the rest of the season, likely, ideally. Now, when I say late, I'm saying probably around 9s, 10 to 12 is where you want to start looking at your quarterback. And just for example, we're going to go with last year with round 12. These were quarterbacks still available at round 12. You had Tom Brady, who finished quarterback 14. Ben Roethlisberger, he finished at quarterback 3. Wild. Dak Prescott was quarterback 10. Jimmy Garoppolo, he was averaging 16 points per game. And he only played the first 3 games of the year. And so he didn't really get a chance to get into a rhythm. Josh Allen finished at quarterback 20, and he played only 12 games. Lamar Jackson only started 7 and finished at 28. Kirk Cousins finished quarterback 13. And I'm not even talking about guys like who I think have high upsides this year, Matthew Stafford and Marcus Mariota, who can honestly make a difference and let you draft these guys around maybe the 11th or 12th round, because you're hitting you in those earlier rounds. You want to hit on the skill positions. You want to find players with high upside, a lot of potential, and a lot of opportunity. And my last tip is don't worry about bye weeks. A lot of you might know this, but I know a lot of first time or even some veteran fantasy football players, they try to build a team around bye weeks. This is just 1 week where you might have to put a squad together from rubble. I wouldn't sacrifice not drafting a star player just because he has a similar bye week as one of my other players in his position. So don't worry about bye weeks. Go ahead, take those star players. Next, I want to go through a few of the mock drafts using this strategy. I did them from picks 4, 8, and 12. So you got your early, your mid, and your late picks. So going through this first one, this is pick 4. I ended up going Alvin Kamara. So, again, you're going running back early. And you see here on the turnaround Kelsey, he's off the board most likely at the beginning of the second round. I've seen him even going as high as late first round. I don't think that'll be the case for most leagues though. But I knew I was going to have to snag Zach Ertz because George Kittle likely won't be around for that next pick. I mean, he was in this case, but I didn't want to risk it. Plus, Zach Ertz, I think, has much higher upside. He has a rapport with Carson Wentz, more so than Kittle does with Garoppolo. So I did that, and then I went ahead, and you see Patrick Mahomes going in the third round. Don't draft your quarterbacks that early, guys. But I ended up going Derrick Henry, a guy who I think has the potential to be a top 10 running back this season. So getting him in that third round was big. So waiting again. And I was thinking maybe I go running back, but the only one all the ones that I liked kind of went off. The only one I was considering probably taking at that point was Sony Michel. So I went ahead and I just decided to go. I was thinking maybe Kenyon Drake or Chris Carson, but I figured one of them might be around for my fifth pick. So I went ahead and I took wide receiver. I kind of regret not taking Robert Woods in this case, but I went with Julian Edelman. You know, what can you do about it? So coming back around, we ended up getting Chris Carson, which was huge. So we snagged Carson on the turn. Oh yeah, Woods was taken already, so never mind. But we snagged Chris Carson, got Dante Pettis, a guy who has a lot of upside, probably going to be the number one wide out there in San Fran. Alshon Jeffrey. So now you want to just start addressing your wide receiver position, because I have my three starters in Kamara, Henry, and Carson. So I'm set at running back. I want to address wide receiver. So I grabbed Royce Freeman just in case Philip Lindsay. I think they're going to be sharing some carries this year. And if Lindsay goes down, then he's a nice guy to have. I ended up getting MVS, who I'm kind of high on this year. I think he's going to have a big year for the Packers. And then I ended up going, I'm still here. I'm in round 10 where I'm saying, hey, 10 to 12, start eyeing quarterback. Quarterback's still available. Phillip Rivers, Tom Brady, Ben Roethlisberger, Kirk Cousins, Jimmy Garoppolo, Dak Prescott. All these quarterbacks are still available, but I've just been addressing guys who I think I got my star players, and I got guys with high upside. That's why I took Carlos Hyde, just in case Damian Williams goes down, or you just don't know what to expect right now with that Kansas City offense, or at least in the backfield. Anthony Miller, a guy who saw a lot of targets in that offense last year in Chicago. And I ended up snagging Kirk Cousins there in the second or 12th round. I'm really high on Kirk Cousins. And then in this case, the final two rounds were rounds 13 and 14. And what I do is I'm going to take my defense first. I'm going to go out and I'm going to look at the best matchup possible. Like the Cowboys week 1, they have the Giants. It's like that's a very favorable matchup. The Cowboys have been a top 10 defense in the past. So just went ahead. I took them. I got a reliable kicker in Robbie Gould. But like I said, you could stream these guys week to week. So right now, that's a good-looking squad. With Zach Ertz, I got a very high. He had over 100 receptions last year. A very high-end high-end wide receiver too. So taking a look at how we did in this one. This is me picking at the 8th spot, and did pretty good. Le'Veon Bell. Again, I was tempted to go with a wide receiver at this point and then just hit running back the rest of the way. And if Bell was gone, I might have, but he wasn't. So I took Bell. Then on the reach around, Travis Kelce still wasn't taken. So I was like, you know what? If I come back around, I know in the middle of the third round, I could get at least one of those tight ends. Took Nick Chubb. So bam, I got two, what I think are high-end running back ones. Took Zach Ertz in the third round, basically my wide receiver one. Got Kenyon Drake, a guy who I'm starting to like more. I think he will get a lot. I think he'll get a lot of opportunity this year in Miami. And this is coming from a Miami fan. I ended up going with Jarvis Landry because he's going to be playing in the slot this year, so he's going to see a lot of targets, or he's going to be playing a lot more in the slot I should say, this year. So I think he's going to see a lot more targets. I got Tyler Boyd, a guy who exploded on the scene last year. And like I said, he finished wide receiver 17, and I was missing 2 games. And then these next picks, I went with running backs with high upside because I got my 3 starters. So I got Miles Sanders, who could end up being the starter there in Philly, and Ronald Jones, who could end up being the starter there in Tampa. I grabbed Golden Tate because I think he's going to be a favorite target for Eli Manning because Eli can't throw the ball downfield much anymore. Again, MVS, what can I say? I really like him. Deshaun Jackson, a guy that I think has a ton of upside in that offense. And then, honestly, right here, I would have ended up picking Kirk Cousins, but just for a little flavor, a little variety, I went with Josh Allen, which isn't a bad pick either. But I mean, you look, coming into this round, Ben Roethlisberger and Dak Prescott were still available. So if I wanted to go a round earlier, I could have, honestly. And then I go with the Eagles. Eagles defense, I think they're facing the Redskins week 1. That's right. So I was like, that's a super favorable matchup. Went with that, got Atlanta's kicker because that offense is nutty. So looking at that team, I'm very set at the skill positions. Josh Allen, okay, but he provides that rushing threat as well. So you know he's at least going to get yards on the ground, even if that offense isn't any better than it was last year. So feeling really good with that draft. Let's go ahead. Let's take a look at what the 12th pick got me. So look at that. 4 wide receivers off the board by the time the 11th pick is. I don't think that'll happen, but it might. I went James Conner. Then I immediately knew I'm going to go ahead. I'm sitting there at the final pick in the 3rd round. There's no way I'm going to get one of those tight ends. I'll take Kelsey right here. So I did. And sure enough, even better, Derrick Henry was available there for me at the end of the 3rd round. And then I took Brandon Cooks, who is, I think in the last, 3 or 4 years, he's had over 1,000 yards every year. He just produces constantly. He was wide receiver 13 last year, so I got there a very high-end wide receiver 2 at the least. So there is that. I'm loving it. I was able to get Tyler Boyd, and there we go. We got Brandon Cooks and Tyler Boyd. 2 Week 9 matchups. What am I going to do? It's not that big of a deal. If Week 9's a loss for me, then oh well. Not like it's a Week 14 playoff time, you know. So I also got Lamar Miller, a guy I've read a lot of different studies with Lamar Miller. That's something I could probably go into in another video. There's some videos out there that guys have really gone into why they think Lamar Miller is going to have a really good, a much better 2019 than he did last year. So I went with the potential upside. Again, this guy's in my slot, but then I went ahead and got Miles Sanders, a guy with a lot of upside potentially. I got Sterling Shepard, and then right here I got a handcuff for James Conner because he was banged up late last year. I got Jalen Samuels. So grab your handcuffs, people. Kiki QT guy. This is a guy also with a ton of upside. He saw, like, his targets varied from week to week, but like he was getting anywhere between, he'll have a 7 target game, or he'll come in and maybe get 2 targets. So, but there was a lot of high upside, especially if you go back to that playoff game last year against the Colts. He had like 7 catches for over 100 yards. Another wide receiver with a ton of upside, and Deshaun Hamilton, who the last 4 weeks of the season, he was in the top 5 in targets. So, guy with potential upside, especially if Emmanuel Sanders doesn't return to that team healthy. That's why you see Emmanuel Sanders getting taken in the 12th round here. Kirk Cousins, because I love Kirk Cousins. I was able to get that Philly defense because the Washington Redskins, I think, are going to be very bad. And Adam Vinatieri, who, outside of Justin Tucker, who's been more reliable than Adam Vinatieri over the last 10 years. But looking at that squad, that is a squad that could take me to the playoffs right there. So I think right there, at least as far as going into the season, this strategy will produce the most results. I think if you take those tips, I'm gonna pop them back up on the board here. But if you follow those all the way through in your draft, and you draft wisely, go with the flow of the draft. You know, there's nothing wrong with drafting a running back or a wide receiver, I should say, in the 1st round if the running back talent isn't there. Michael Thomas, DeAndre Hopkins, and Devontae Adams. They're all very safe, very high scoring options. But you got to know, hey, I'm going to have to really address running back hard in those rounds 3, 4, and 5. That's it for the video. Do the YouTube stuff. It's always much appreciated. I'm going to have more fantasy football content coming out in the next few weeks, as well as some Madden content, because it's a football channel, man. It's Madden. Gotta love Madden. But until next time, you be easy, my friends. Later.